Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1990 science fiction techno thriller Hardware. Now, Hardware to me personally is a gem. I think it's an underrated, unheralded gem of the science fiction genre. I think it's one of the best films of the science fiction genre when it comes to the 1990s. And I also feel it is one of the most effective films visually when it comes to capturing the aesthetic and the overall feel of the subgenre of cyberpunk. And I think it's just a phenomenal film in a multitude of different ways. It's a movie that just gets better each and every time I see it. It represents everything that I love about cinema. It transports you to a world and a realm that's uniquely its own that you don't see outside your front door, and it's just a really strong, solid, and exciting film. It's got some genuine thrills and chills, and it's an exciting film to watch visually, just to see uh, all the different crazy visuals as they unfold on the screen. The film is directed by Richard Stanley, who also wrote the film, and this is his directorial debut. And this is one of the most impressive directorial debuts that I can think of. I mean, the sheer level of difficulty alone when it comes to this project is daunting for even the most established filmmaker. And the fact that he was a first time filmmaker and he did this good of a job is something that deserves to be commended. Yes, he worked on some music videos prior to doing this film, but music video direction is a different animal. It did help him in terms of creating some very striking visuals, but I've seen a lot of instances where a director who had done music videos years prior gets an opportunity to direct a film, and the film looks like a music video. It doesn't look like a feature film. It doesn't have the size and the scope and the feel that a film does. It looks too much like a polished, overly slick, overly processed music video. And that really isn't the case here with Hardware. The way that he handles different techniques is nothing short of astonishing, especially the fact that he's got zooms, he's got pans, he's got different camera angles in here, he's got POV shots, he's got everything you can think of under the sun when it comes to the direction, and he handles everything brilliantly. It is a brilliant job well done by Richard Stanley. And it just showcases that he's just an inherently talented filmmaker that just runs in his blood. There are some people out there, there are some talents where it's just something that's ingrained in them. It's just a skill that they have. And I feel that Richard Stanley is definitely one of those filmmakers. He showed it here with his first film. He showed it again in Dust Devil. He even showed it in The Color from Outer Space. And this is probably still his best work. But I feel that he did such a great job the first time around that it's some of the best that I've seen when it comes to a film like this. So it's hard to top. I cannot sing enough praises for the direction in Hardware. It's one of those things where it's another project that it's just awe-inspiring and amazing that he did this good of a job because of the limitations. He didn't have a big, massive budget to fall back on for this movie. He had a budget of 1.5 million. That's not a lot. And this is a film that has extensive visual and practical effects, has a lot of sequences that rely heavily upon those, as well as production design and art direction. And he lit those scenes like a pro. He shot them in ways where the scenes that involve the Mark 13 robot, they don't come across as cheap looking. They don't come across as sequences where you can tell most of the time that it's just a guy in a suit or it's just a puppet. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is pretty underrated when it comes to filmmaking in general. And Stanley just nailed it. He nailed it from the outset, and shot those scenes in ways where it looked like it was the real thing most of the time. And I think he did a really good job with the script as well. I know it's inspired by a short story called Shock that was featured in 2000 AD, the 2000 AD comic series. And the writers of Shock sued the people who were behind Hardware to get credit for Shock on Hardware's credits. And I see the similarities, but I don't think it's just a straight up ripoff. I think Stanley did add his own elements and his own touch to things where it doesn't just seem like it's the same thing. But that's just me personally. But I could definitely see why the people who wrote Shock wanted some credit, because there are some definite similarities here. But right off the bat, you just have a great way to open up the film with a very striking visual of this desert wasteland, this apocalyptic wasteland after a nuclear war. And you have this nomad who's rummaging and scavenging through the radiated wastelands. And he finds this prototype of a robot named Mark 13. And the prototype was disassembled and scrapped and left in the wastelands because, as you find out later, it had a fatal flaw. And the scavenger takes this robot, these pieces of this robot, and sells them to this this other guy, this junk dealer named Alvy, who's friends with Moses Baxter and Shades, two of I wouldn't say necessarily the main characters, because the main characters are Moses and Jill, but Shades is definitely a major supporting character. And Alvy sells the head of the robot to Moses, and then he keeps the rest of it because he wants to figure out what makes it tick, what's going on with this thing, and that he's able to discover the plans of the robot later on. That's where he finds out that it's a Mark 13 and that it's a population control robot. And Moses takes the head to his girlfriend Jill. She uses it as an art project. The robot then activates itself and then reassembles itself from spare parts and just starts attacking Jill and Moses in their tight, cramped, dingy apartment. There is some other stuff going on with this perverted neighbor who's spying on Jill, Lincoln, and he gets involved later on where he becomes a victim of the robot. And it's really up to Jill and Moses to try to stop this thing, this state-of-the-art killing machine. And yeah, there are bits of the Terminator that are thrown into the script, as well as other films in the science fiction genre, but it still feels like a very unique and individualized experience when it comes to the story, from the setting to the Mark 13 and how it reassembles itself, how from that point on it turns into honestly kind of a legitimate horror film with this deadly killing machine that is hunting people down and is taking people out. And it even has some nice moments of subtext and social commentary. Some of it's not very subtle, but it's still really effective. I mean, one of the most striking visuals is just the look of the Mark 13. Uh, After Jill paints the American flag on its skull, it comes to life, and now it's like the American industrial complex that's obsessed with war toys come to life and trying to kill everybody. And honestly, it's really strong and effective when it comes to the social commentary, because even to this day, Americans, the American government is still obsessed with war and war toys and war technology. And the most money that we spend when it comes to the American budget is on war toys to this day. So it was just ahead of its time. And I think it does a good enough job with the characters to make you at least get to know them enough to like them and care about them, like Moses and Jill. The I do like the fact that you have someone like the neighbor who's like a total pervert. It really adds a different dynamic to the script. Shades is a very eccentric kind of guy, so uh, what's going on with him is also very interesting, and it's got a lot of moments of violence and just hardcore elements that really do stick with you, and just a lot of creativity from how the robot assembles itself, from the design of the robot to how the robot employs its various different weaponry, uh, how the robot is ultimately killed, and even how the robot takes out some of the characters. I mean, it's very satisfying in some ways, like how the pervert gets dispatched, how Moses dies. It is kind of unfortunate that he died, because I did like that character. But Jill is still a strong enough character that even though Moses died, I still was invested in the film all the way till the end of it, because I still think that she was close enough to the level of quality of a character as Moses, that Moses dying was something I was able to deal with, but I can understand why some people weren't too fond of that decision. But another reason why I could deal with it is just the sheer creativity of his death scene. He goes on a wild trip because the Mark 13 robot poisons him with some kind of hallucinogenic toxin. And so what you see is his dying visions that are just straight out of a bad acid trip, and it's really trippy and really cool to look at, and really nice series of visuals. And it's not a film, despite the fact that it does have a decent amount of social commentary, that really overstays its welcome when it comes to that aspect of it. And it doesn't become too convoluted or hard to follow either. I've seen some reviews where people have talked about how muddled it is and how hard it is to follow, and I'm like, what movie are you watching? It's a very straightforward film. It's a film about survival. That's really what it is. The robot gets activated, it reassembles itself, and then it's about survival. It's about these characters trying to survive this robot that's trying to kill them, because the robot was programmed to kill people to curb the Earth's population. It was set up as population control. So yeah, I think the script is good. I think I don't think it's just good. I think it's great. I think it's a great screenplay, and I think the cast is also quite solid. I think, I wouldn't say it's spectacular as a whole, but I think for the most part, these performers all deliver some really consistently good performances. Dylan McDermott as Mo, I definitely feel it's one of his best acting roles. I know initially Stanley or some other people involved with the production, they were looking for Bill Paxton to play this role. But apparently Miramax and whoever is behind production of this film, they weren't aware of Bill Paxton or didn't bother to try to find Bill's agent's number, so they didn't really go and try to get him, which I think is a big mistake. As much as I like Dylan McDermott in this, Bill Paxton as Moses would have been even better. And Bill never got contacted to do it, and that's why he did Navy SEALs instead. And another actor that they wanted was Jeffrey Combs. They wanted Jeffrey Combs, the reanimator himself, to play Shades, but because of the fact that it's a UK production, they could only cast a certain amount of American actors, which I find to be absolute bullshit. But because of that, they couldn't cast Jeffrey Combs as Shades. And I definitely feel that was a huge missed opportunity because, John Lynch is fine as Shades, but Jeffrey Combs would have been so much better. But yeah, it's still a good enough cast. I mean, McDermott still does a good job despite the fact that the man was going through a very difficult time. This is right around the time he broke up with Julia Roberts, his girlfriend, and so he was down in the dumps. And honestly, that kind of fit the character of Moses. So maybe it kind of added to the performance. Maybe it was a little bit of a positive, despite the circumstances. Stacey Travis was terrific. She was the biggest standout to me. McDermott was good, but Travis was terrific. She was tremendous as Jill, a character that was very resourceful, a female lead or co-lead that could hold her own in a believable way, and there wasn't really a lot of forced identity politics or anything. She was a badass in her own right, and I really liked that performance. And it is so unfortunate that she got blackballed by Hollywood. Blacklisted. She got blacklisted by Hollywood because she refused the advances of Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein was one of the producers of this film, and he was doing his just terrible, awful shit, even around this time, early in his career. And he was being a skeevy perv, and she wasn't having any of it. And he had enough influence in the industry at the time that he essentially blacklisted her. And that's fucking awful. And she deserved a lot better than that. Because this should have catapulted her career, because she was really good in this. Like I said, John Lynch was just there. He was serviceable. He was okay. Iggy Pop, he's only in it for a little bit as a character named Angry Bob. Carl McCoy plays a nomad. He's actually a member of a band. In fact, I think he's a member of the band that Richard Stanley did some music videos prior to directing the film. And I'm just looking up the trivia real quick to get the name of the band. Yeah, goth rock band Fields of the Nephilim. So, yeah, he's a member of that band. And that's why he was in the film as the Nomad. And he's not the only music guy that's in the cast, because you have Lemmy himself. Yes, Lemmy from Motorhead is in this movie. Like, when Lemmy decides to grace his presence with your film, you know you got yourself a classic. You know you got yourself a good one. Because Lemmy's in it as the water taxi driver. You also have William Hootkins, who plays the perv, Lincoln Weinberg. And he did a great job playing such a perverted, just disgusting character. Just a total piece of slime. And the film has some really nice looking cinematography by Steven Chivers. It's also well edited by Derek Trigg. Tremendous editing. I mean, this film has a lot of different cuts, and it could come across very chaotic or too choppy with lesser quality editing, and that didn't happen here. And then, of course, you have the music by Simon Boswell, which I think is spectacular. I think it sets the mood really well for this film. It's catchy in its own right. And then you have the songs that are featured in the film's soundtrack, which I definitely feel are some of the biggest standouts of the film other than Stanley's direction. Yeah, I love the soundtrack for this. I'm looking it up on line here just so I can get the name. I know one of the songs is, you know, this is what you want, this is what you get. Yeah, you have the Order of Death by Public Image Ltd, which I think that's the song. You know, this is what you want, this is what you get. Bow, 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 bow. So yeah, the Order of Death, Stigmata by Ministry, Ace of Spades by Motorhead. You got Cold Metal by Iggy Pop. Bad Life is also in there, which is another Iggy Pop song. And even this weird song, this weird little spur of the moment thing that William Hootkins sings in a creepy scene where he's just messing with Lisa. You know, they all walk the wibbly wobbly walk. Like, even that is catchy. So yeah, really effective and strong soundtrack. And the film isn't that long. It goes by at a really good pace. It's only like an hour and 30 something minutes. I've seen other critics and other reviews point out how like slow paced and boring the movie is, and I'm like, I don't know what film they're watching. I don't think it's slow paced at all. I think it goes by at a really quick, a brisk pace for the most part, and doesn't take that long to get going. And overall, yeah, I really like the film. I like it a lot. And I want to mention real quick, I forgot one other performer that I wanted to point out who's in the cast, who plays Alvy, the junk buyer. It's played by an actor named Mark Northover, who was Burglecut in Willow. So it was fun to see Burglecut again in another movie. Like when I first saw his film, I was like, it's Burglecut, and it was cool to see Burglecut, and he did a good job in his little role in the film. But yeah, it's a bizarre, out there, one of a kind masterpiece to me. I really do feel that way about Hardware, and I cannot recommend it enough. I really cannot. And I know some people nowadays are leery of the film because of somewhat recent allegations involving Richard Stanley and some pretty serious stuff. But this isn't one of those instances to me where Richard Stanley, when it comes to what he did or what he might have done years later in his private life, is actually in the script of this movie. There are no scenes, there are no moments where there is anything involving domestic violence. So to me personally, I think you fully separate the art from the artist here and just appreciate an amazing film, an amazing feat of filmmaking for a first-time filmmaker, an amazing feat in general when it comes to the production design and art direction and the visual and practical effects for such a low budget, and just a really one-of-a-kind, unique film. The kind of thing that you look for when it comes to cinema. You want unique experiences. You don't want stuff that you're just going to get out of everyday life. And Hardware is absolutely one of those films. So, yeah, check it out. It gets some of my highest marks. And I really don't know what else to say about the film except thanks for watching my review of Hardware. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.